Now we're going to focus on Phylum Chordata. Phylum Chordata focuses on animals that have a nerve cord, hence chordata. A nerve cord is another name for a spinal cord. This comes from the brain. Now, some taxonomists regard Phylum Chordata as a superphylum with 3 total phylums, but we're going to focus on Phylum Chordata having 3 subphylums. Here are some terms that you need to know. I would encourage you to make some index cards on these. The first one is herbivorous, or herbivore, means eating plants. Carnivore, carnivorous, refers to eating meat. And omnivore, or omnivorous, is referring to eating both plants and meat. An example of a herbivore would be a rabbit, a cow, a deer. An example of a carnivore would be a lion, a dog. An example of an omnivore would be a human, a raccoon, a bear. Now, chordates and vertebrates have separate sexes, and this means one animal is going to be a male and the other animal is going to be a female. Then we have the term hemoglobin. This is referring to the center of the red blood cell. Heme referring to iron. So what color will animals have if they have hemoglobin as their center element or center structure? That's going to be iron, so it's going to be red. Hemoglobin is going to help with the production or the absorbing of oxygen in the blood. Then we have the alimentary canal. The alimentary canal is the pathway from the mouth to the anus. So basically, the alimentary canal follows mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, then anus. Then we have 3 terms: oviparous, viparous, and oviviparous. Oviparous, and one of the key little points here is, or parts of the word is O. Think of it as an egg. So oviparous animals lay eggs. That would be such as chickens, birds, all different types of birds. Then we have viparous. Viparous is referring to vive, meaning live or to live. This is live birth. This would be a rabbit, a cat. The baby is usually born in a placenta and develops inside the womb. While oviparous, the first one, the baby develops inside the egg. And then the last term, ovo and viviparous. Ovo meaning egg, vivi meaning live. This is actually something that few animals, like some snakes and some sharks, do. Ovoviparous, meaning the animal develops inside an egg, but the egg is inside the body. So when it hatches, it comes out and it looks like live birth. So basically the baby shark will be developing inside the mother, inside the egg. It will then hatch, come out, and it'll look like live birth, but what else will come out of the mother will be the eggshell. So you can look up these terms on Google or in the dictionary for a detailed explanation. Okay, here are the 3 subphylums of Chordata. The first one we're going to focus on is Urochordata, and this is going to be describing the tunicates. Then we have Cephalochordata, and this is going to be described by the lancelets. And then we have Vertebrata, or those with a backbone, a vertebrae. And the vertebrates, this is about 60,000 different species that are recognized. Now, Urochordata, remember, is a chordate, but it's not a vertebrate. Because we have the 3 subphylums of Chordata, it has a nerve cord, but remember, number 3 was Vertebrata, right? So this has a nerve cord, but no backbone. So it's an invertebrate, but it's not technically put in the invertebrate category. It's going to be still considered a kind of a pre-vertebrate animal because it has a structure that's similar to a vertebrae. And this structure is kind of like a splint. When you put a splint on your arm, it is a structure that does not wrap around the the spinal cord, but it actually lines above the spinal cord. It does provide some support, but it does not completely cover and surround and protect the nerve cord. So tunicates are marine animals, and you can see one in the picture there. It's not the fish, it's actually that bluish sponge-like structure. And the focus is when it's a larva, it has something called a notochord. And the notochord is that structure that's like the splint. So when it's a larva, it has the notochord, and then when it becomes the adult, it loses its notochord, but it never gets a vertebrae. Okay, so we said the larva has the chordate characteristics, and the larva will be free swimming, and it'll go into the ground and grow as an adult. The adult will be sessile, like a sponge, not moving. And these are not sponges, but they are called sea squirts. Here's a picture of the larva, and you can see there's the dorsal nerve cord, and then below it is the notochord, that splint-like structure that provides some support. But when it becomes an adult, it loses the notochord. It keeps the nerve cord, but it loses the notochord, and it gets a covering. Hence the word tunicate. Tunicate. So a tunic is a covering over the whole body. So you can see on the left side, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 words down. We have the word tunic, a covering. So you can see there's the ganglia, the brain, has a little basic nerve system, it has a digestive system, it has gills. So basically this structure looks very similar to maybe a sponge. It has an in-current structure, ex-current siphon, kind of like a clam, but it is in the chordate category, not the vertebrate, but the chordate category because the larva has the notochord, which acts similar to a vertebrae. Okay, and why is it called a tunicate? Because it loses the notochord and it gets a covering, a tunic. Okay, here's the lancelet. The lancelet is a cephalochordate. In the same way, it has a notochord and a nerve cord. So it is called a chordate because it has the nerve cord. Cephalo meaning head region, so it does have a little head region. And what's interesting about these guys, they do not ever lose the notochord. So they keep the notochord for the rest of their life, but they never form a vertebrae. So the tunicate will lose the notochord when it becomes an adult. For the lancelet, though, it will always stay in its life cycle. It will always keep the notochord. So the lancelet is small. You can see in the hand of a fisherman. You can see how small it is on the finger. It is segmented. It has little internal segments or separations, and it is very fish-like. And as we said, it retains or keeps the notochord throughout its whole life, but it will not develop into a backbone. So you can see a picture here. You can see the nerve cord is dorsal. You can see the notochord is below that, is going to be more ventral, and it provides that support. Now we're going to move into the vertebrates. Today we're only going to focus on fish. But you can see we break this up into 3 fish classes: the amphibians, the reptiles, birds, which is called aves, and then mammals. So vertebrates have a backbone, and this wraps around, protects the nerve cord. So again, what is the vertebrae? What is the vertebral column? You can see the separations. We divide it into neck vertebrae, which is called cervical vertebrae, neck vertebrae. We have thoracic, which is back vertebrae, or your chest vertebrae. And then we have the lumbar, which is lower back. And then we have the sacral, or sacrum, which is part of the coccyx. And that's going to be the tailbone. A single vertebrae is going to have a spine. It's going to have little wings called transverse processes, transverse. And then it has a body and a space called a foramen. And that space is where the nerve cord or the spinal cord goes. Now there are 3 fish classes that we're going to focus on. The first one are the agnathans, which are going to be the jawless fish. And then we're going to focus on chondriichthyes, which are fish with cartilage skeletons, and then osteichthyes, which are fish with a bony skeleton, hence osteo referring to bone. So we said that the phylum is Chordata. So the subphylum is Vertebrate Chordata because these chordates have a backbone. And the class that we're focusing on is Agnatha. So these jawless fish, they have teeth and a suction cup mouth, but no jaw. They can't chew. They do have a backbone. They do have a vertebral column. And basically, that vertebral column is made up of cartilage. They have a cranium or a brain case, and they have a cephalized head region. Now, the muscles are attached to the endoskeleton, so we did say they do have a backbone, they do have an internal skeleton, and the muscles attached to that internal skeleton, and that helps with swimming. So you can actually see the lampreys or the specific agnathans. There are 3 of them hooked to the fish, and you can see they are more like parasites. They will suck nutrients from the fish, and you can see the little lamprey's eye and the suction-cupped mouth and teeth. Then we move to class Chondriichthyes. These are the cartilaginous fish, chondro referring to cartilage. This is going to be the sharks and the rays, the mantis stingrays. So they do have a backbone, they do have an endoskeleton, inside skeleton, but that is going to be made of cartilage, not bone. So we said it has a skeleton of cartilage. These guys will have replaceable teeth. They do have jaws, so they can open and close. So this is different from the agnathans. Their dorsal fin is very long. We can see a shark swimming in water if it's at the surface. So the dorsal fin is longer than the ventral fins. And then it has a tail fin. This is something you will need to know, that the tail fin is known as the caudal fin. And then we have a new term called ectothermic. Ectothermic means cold-blooded. This does not mean the blood is cold. This means the body temperature changes with the environment. So if the shark is in a very cold environment, it will probably slow down, won't be as fast. If the animal is in a warm, hot water, maybe warm environment, it will probably be a lot faster than being in the cold environment. And then sharks have visible gills. They do not have a gill cover like bony fish. So here is the breakdown of the internal shark. You can actually see where the gill slits are. The heart is right there. The water runs through the gill slits, carrying oxygenated blood. Then that will actually go through the heart, be pumped through the body. We can see the stomach region, the liver, the kidney. We're also going to see in the bony fish, very similar to that. We're going to see the intestines. And then we have something called the cloaca or cloaca. This is something that you will need to know. And this is a single opening in which urine, feces, and the egg or sperm will come out of a single hole or single opening. So very different from mammals, where most mammals will have a hole, an anal opening for feces, have a separate opening for maybe laying eggs, and then we'll have also a separate opening for urinating. Specifically in the female, having 3 separate openings for mammals. But with fish, amphibians, reptiles, and birds, they will have what is called the cloaca. Now we move to class Osteichthyes. Osteo referring to bone, so they do have an endoskeleton, and it is made of bone. If you ever ate a fish and you had some of the bony skeleton, not good to choke up. Then we have the fish does have distinct scales, and it has a little line across its side. Remember, lateral meaning side, so on the left and right of the fish, it will have a line that actually is a sense receptor, and the sense receptor will detect temperature, pressure, and current changes in the water. So it'll help the fish know, is it going too deep? Is it going to where it's too cold? Is it going in a direction that it does not want to go? Does it need to follow a certain current? We're going to talk about how bony fish have a pair or a set of 2 pelvic fins and 2 pectoral fins. Now, the fins, especially the dorsal fins, will have spines, and we can actually tell how old a fish is by counting the number of spines on the dorsal fins. It also has a caudal fin, a single tail fin, and some of these fish that we're going to see will also have a single anal fin. Now, fish also have a swim bladder. These bony fish will be able to control their swim bladder, and it's like a balloon inside their body that allows them to float or sink or go closer to the surface. Now, when a fish is dead, it has no control over the swim bladder, and therefore that's why a fish will float as soon as it dies. Now, the fish's scales, not only does it have spines and will increase the number of spines as it gets older, but the fish's scales will also grow larger as the fish grows. Now, the fish do have a 2-chambered heart, a single atria and ventricle, which will pump blood through the body. And the fish is also referred to as ectothermic, and we saw that on the previous page, just like the shark. And it is cold-blooded. So it will be influenced by how much energy it has by the environment. If the environment is warm, okay, the body temperature will change with the environment, and the body temperature will also be warm. If the environment is cold, the body temperature will be cold. Now, remember, just like sharks, bony fish are going to be ectothermic. But when a shark stops swimming, a shark will sink and kind of sit at the bottom of the ocean. If you ever went to an aquarium, it will just be sitting there. Fish, however, will not do that. They actually are able to go to different depths based on their swim bladder. Okay, here are some parts of the perch or the bony fish that you will need to know. We're going to dissect and to kind of take a look at the perch. We have the upper jaw, which is the maxilla. The lower jaw that moves is called the mandible. Here's a new term that you will need to know, the operculum. The operculum is the gill cover. Sharks do not have an operculum. Agnathans, the lamprey, you can see the gills. They do not have a operculum. But what we will have to do is lift up the operculum to actually count and see the gills. Then you can see the lateral line, which detects temperature, pressure, and current change. We have one pectoral fin, which is going to be very close to the operculum. This is pectoral, think of my chest, versus pelvic, which would be my hip. So which one is higher up? It's my chest, my pectoral fin. Which is lower? The pelvic fins. Now, the pectoral fin is going to be in a pair, so there's one on the left, one's on the right. And then the pelvic fins are they are ventral, but they're also going to be in a grouping of 2. Then we have the anterior referring to front, dorsal fin, dorsal meaning top. And then we have the posterior, or back dorsal fin, back top fin. Then we have the tail fin, which is the caudal fin. And then right next to the cloaca, or right next to, technically, we can say anus, but it's not just the anal opening. It's one single opening where poop, eggs, and urine will come out, and that will be out of the cloaca. So it should be called the cloaca fin, or cloaca fin. Okay, yummy, yummy. Looking at the internal parts of the fish, we actually have the gills. That's what the gills look like. They are layered. I think there's about 5 of them. And basically what we have is, we can't see this unless we lift up the operculum. Below that, just like the shark, below the gills, you have the heart. And then we have the liver, and then stomach. And then you can actually see the swim bladder, which is like a little balloon. And then we have the egg sac. And then we have the intestines down below. Okay, so we'll be looking at a diagram very similar to this, in which we can see the brain, we can see the the eyes. Now you can see the nostrils. Now another name for the nostril is going to be called the nare, N-A-R-E, and frogs will also have a nare. Then we have the pharynx, which is kind of like that throat area going to the gills. Water will go through the mouth and then rush over the gills, go into the heart, and then get passed throughout the body, the oxygenated blood. Then we have the liver, stomach, and at the very top we can see we have the swim bladder and kidney. The kidney is actually above that swim bladder. Then we have the intestines, and then you can see the intestines and the sexual organs, which are called the gonads, which releases egg or sperm, as well as the urinary bladder, okay, which and ureter, which will secrete urine, will all come out of the cloaca or cloaca. Yep, they found Nemo.